So, hello everyone. I would like to welcome you to the launch of our podcast series, Agriculture Voices of Syria. And thank you for participating in our event. We hope you will enjoy learning about our project and that you will be willing to promote our podcast to your listeners. Now I will share my screen with you. I prepared some slides. Okay. Okay, so this is our podcast, Agriculture Voices Syria. And this is our podcast logo that you will see on many slides today. We have prepared 3 short presentations. I am Mirela Barbu, and I am the project principal investigator. In my presentation, I will introduce the project, explaining its rationale, and also the ways in which we are implementing it. Shaher Abdulatif is our project coordinator for all activities in Turkey and Syria. He will talk about the role of Syrian agriculture experts in addressing the needs of the Syrian farmers. Martin Spinelli is the project co-investigator. He will explain the role of podcasting in knowledge exchange for development. To conclude, Catherine Jones, our project communication officer, will briefly present our website. And after our presentations, we very much welcome comments and questions from you. So I'll start with my presentation. And I will talk about our project. First of all, our project goals. So the main goal of our project is to promote sustainable agriculture in Syria through podcasting. And we are planning to do so through knowledge exchange, mobilizing researchers, practitioners, and decision makers in Syria and abroad. We are also working towards the implementation of sustainable development goals, and those concerning our project activities are mentioned on these slides, and as you can see. The project is funded by IDCF SSRP. IDCF is International Development Challenge Fund. SSRP is Sussex Sustainability Research Program. IDCF is part of the UK Global Challenges Research Fund, which covers different areas of intervention. Our specific area is equitable access to sustainable development, and in particular, to build secure and resilient food systems supported by sustainable resources in agriculture. These are our project partners, and I would like now to spend a few words on the role of CARA, which has enabled our partnership. So I started to collaborate with CARA last year, and this allowed me to meet Syrian colleagues who are experts in agronomy. The idea of this project stems from those conversations when I became aware of the urgent need of supporting services for Syrian farmers. From this, I envisaged a way to deliver these services from abroad during a pandemic and using Syrian expertise. And I also add here, during a relatively short project, over 30 weeks, and also with a relatively small budget of £25,000. So Cara introduced us to ACDP SAE networks, which became our partner and with whom we have built the project. And also I would like to add here the importance that Sarah played in establishing these networks, because many of our colleagues today are or were member of CARA Syria program. When it became clear to me that podcasting would have been the best means to pursue our goal, I searched for a partner in our university, and I discovered my colleague Martin, who is an international renowned expert in podcasting. And at that stage, that means in November last year, we wrote this project that was awarded the grant. So here you can read our project stakeholders. First of all, Syrian agricultural experts and Syrian farmers, but also NGOs who operate in Northwest Syria, project collaborators, and research community, and humanitarian aid organizations interested in food security and livelihoods. I would like here to underline that our project collaborators are very important to us. The project activities have been designed to allow them to use and enhance their expertise. And in fact, we have two groups of people, Syrian colleagues, those who participated in the podcast production, the agricultural experts, and also those who participate in promotion that will start this month in Syria, and also in running the survey. So I will talk now briefly about the project implementation. The project has 4 stages. It began by organizing the activities, selecting the team, and purchasing the equipment for podcasting, and all these activities been implemented in January. In the second stage, which ran over February, March, we organized a training course, after which our Syrian colleagues, experts in agriculture, started to prepare 15 podcast episodes. At the same time, a smartphone app was designed, and also the website, the ACDP website. But we also started to promote the project on social media. And also we started to work on 5 case studies on agri-food value chains, and I will explain this a little bit later. Now we are in the 3rd stage of our project. We are starting it this week. This week is the 18th week on our Gantt diagram. So this stage will run over May and June, and we will promote the podcast and the app among Syrian farmers. And following their distribution, the farmers will participate in a survey which was designed to collect their feedback on the first 5 episodes, and more broadly about their use of social media. And finally, the last stage in July, we will analyze the data survey, and the research results will be disseminated with stakeholders and also with wider audiences. So as you can see, the project is relatively short, as I said, developed over 30 weeks. And also we have a very tight schedule of activities. We have stuck to it until now, and I have to thank Kate and Shaher for their very efficient coordination of all activities organized in Turkey and in Syria that have run very smoothly until now. And it was a great teamwork for all of us. As I mentioned before, and you can see on this slide, during stage 2, we also started to prepare some case studies on agri-food value chains. I would like to spend a few words on them now. So 3 of them are already available on our project website, and 2 will be released soon. And we also record them in English, and we'll translate the transcripts in Arabic. So I am working on this material together with my colleague Isabella Delabre from Birkbeck University of London. Isabella and I are geographers, and we thought that we could use knowledge from our beautiful discipline to inform our Syrian colleagues about the ways in which a range of agricultural and institutional actors in other countries are developing agri-food sectors. And the whole idea was to disseminate this research, anticipating that a range of Syrian agricultural operators and maybe policymakers will be interested in understanding opportunities that could be further developed at this stage in Syria, but also challenges faced by other countries. As a result, drawing on academic literature from different disciplines, from environmental studies, global value chains, from political ecology and international trade studies, we have prepared 5 case studies on successful practices in agri-food value chains. As this research field is very rich and the cases do not aim to provide an extensive literature review, we selected specific examples from Mediterranean and Middle Eastern countries because their climatic conditions make the farming of crops and trees present in Syria possible. And the content of these case studies is linked to analytical dimensions of the global value chain framework, mainly agricultural inputs and outputs, producers and power relations, institutional frameworks and trade regulations, maintaining a focus on sustainability. The topics are listed on these slides, as you can see. So we already, there are already the case studies on agricultural resource use, on producer organizations, on food standards, and are almost ready those on byproducts and waste and international institutions and trade regulations. And the last two will be released in this month. So I would like to finish my presentation here and give the stage to my colleague Shaher, who will talk about the podcast and our promotional activities in Syria. So I will continue with the presentation on these sets of slides, but Shaher will take over here. Thank you very much. Shaher?
Yes, thank you, Marilla, but I still need to share.
Okay, I will continue from here. Yes.
To see the presentation, please.
Do you see it?
La.
Share screen?
No.
No. Okay, no problem. We can resolve that. Here we are. I'm just putting it on your right cover. Okay, so screen. Here we are.
Yes.
Perfect.
Well, I talk in Arabic, so the translation will be then in English. أهلا وسهلا بكم. شكرا ماريلا لهذا العرض الرائع لمشروع رائع. وأستطيع أن أقول نعم بأننا فخورون كمجموعة من الأكاديميين السوريين للعمل بهذا المشروع الذي يأتي في سياق سلسلة من النشاطات والأبحاث والمشاريع التي نقوم بها. كما تعلمون أكثر من 10 سنوات من الصراع في سوريا. هذا الصراع الذي خلف العديد من المآسي الإنسانية، وليست مأساة إنسانية واحدة. أكثر من يعني 6 ملايين من الأشخاص يعتبرون حاليا ليسوا مؤمنين غذائيا، وهناك 4 ملايين شخص مهددين بأن يصبحوا أيضا غير مؤمنين غذائيا. وبالمناسبة هذه يعني بيانات قد تكون قديمة نسبيا. الآن أصبحت هذه الأرقام في أكثر من 10 مليون شخص فعلا غير مؤمنين غذائيا. أيضا من الكثير ضمن الكثير من القطاعات التي تعرضت للتخريب وللدمار خلال هذه الحرب هو قطاع التعليم أو نظام التعليم بشكل عام وعلى مراحل مختلفة، بدءا من التعليم المدرسي وحتى التعليم الجامعي، وبما فيه أيضا التعليم الحرفي أو التطبيق العملي. النقطة الثالثة للأضرار هذا الصراع أيضا بأن الآلاف من الأكاديميين السوريين والخبراء أيضا اضطروا لمغادرة البلاد، وكما تعلمون هذا أثر على مستوى الخبرات والمعرفة الموجودة في سوريا. ولذلك يعني نعمل في أحد أهم توجهاتنا لربط هذه الخبرات فيما بعضها البعض، وربطها أيضا بالخبرات المتبقية في سوريا. القطاع الزراعي في سوريا في بلد نامي كأي بلد آخر يشكل ركيزة أساسية، ليس فقط لإنتاج الغذاء وتأمين الأمن الغذائي في سوريا، بل أيضا لكونه مصدر دخل للنسبة الغالبية وكما يعني نرى من خلال الإحصائيات بأن أكثر سكان سوريا هم سكان الأرياف، قد يكون على عكس الدول المتقدمة التي يكون يعني معظم سكانها في المدن. وبالتالي نعم، برأيي الشخصي فإن التوجه للقطاع الزراعي والعمل فيه قد يكون هو الخطوة الأهم والركيزة الأهم ليس فقط لإنتاج الغذاء كما ذكرت، وإنما أيضا لمساعدة الناس في بلد خاض لحرب لأكثر من 10 سنوات. أيضا يعني أهم النقاط في القطاع الزراعي هو انهيار الإرشاد الزراعي. كما تعلمون هذه خدمة يعني كانت تقدم من قبل الحكومة، وبالتالي غياب الدور الحكومي أو ضعف الدور الحكومي أدى إلى تعطل هذه الخدمة، والتي كانت تزود المزارعين بالمعلومات والإرشادات وأيضا التدريب. السلايد التالي ميريلا. نعم، إذا نركز من خلال عملنا على نقطة مهمة جدا، وهي تبادل المعرفة. من خلال عملنا في منظمة كارا وبرنامج كارا سوريا مع مجموعة من الباحثين السوريين، قمنا بدراسة واقع للأمن الغذائي، وأيضا بالتعاون مع أحد الزملاء في جامعة كنت. فقدمنا أيضا بحث للتعليم، اسميناها التعليم عبر الحدود، والذي تم فيه دراسة أثر التعليم عن بعد والتعليم أونلاين لتدريب المهندسين والطلاب الزراعيين. أيضا كان هناك بحث لدراسة المستقبل الأمن الغذائي مع جامعة أدنبرا، وآخر بحث كان مع أيضا جامعة أدنبرا لدراسة أثر كوفيد 19 على القوى العاملة الزراعية للاجئين السوريين في سوريا ودول الجوار. إذا من خلال كل هذه الأبحاث نعمل على تطوير نظام متماسك وفعال لنقل المعرفة. فالمشكلة يعني في بلد في ظل الأزمات أو في ظل الحرب تكون فعلا ليس فقط في إنتاج المعرفة، وإنما في كيفية إيصال هذه المعرفة ونقل هذه الخبرات. أيضا هناك أيضا استخدام تقنيات أو تقديم معلومات وتقنيات جديدة لتعزيز الأمن الغذائي. الوضع الحالي يفرض علينا نوع من التكيف، وكباحثين وخبراء أيضا أمامنا سؤال كبير: كيف نقوم بمساعدة الناس؟ كيف نقوم بتوفير الغذاء في ظل الحرب؟ هذه أسئلة في الحقيقة يعني بالنسبة لي لم تكن مطروحة سابقا. فكان يعني هذا المشروع وغيره من المشاريع أيضا فرصة لتبادل الأفكار وتطوير شيء جديد نستطيع أن يعني نساعد فيه الناس. في سوريا دعني أقول يعني أمامكم المخطط، وأعتقد بأنه مشابه للعديد من الدول. هناك تكون علاقة متبادلة ما بين الجامعات ومراكز الأبحاث والمزارعين، ونقصد فيهم هنا مزارعين منتجين النباتات والمحاصيل والخضار، وأيضا مربي الماشية. ومن خلال دراسة ما يحتاجونه هناك تنبثق الاحتياجات البحثية. دور الإرشاد الزراعي يكمن في أنه وسيط في بلد مثل سوريا لنقل هذه المعرفة وهذه الخبرات ما بين الجامعات ومراكز الأبحاث وإيصالها للمزارعين، ثم أخذ احتياجات المزارعين وإيصالها بطريق عكسي. ويتم طبعا من خلال التدريب والبحث، والهدف النهائي هو زيادة الإنتاج وتعزيز الأمن الغذائي. السلايد التالي. نعم، في ظل هذه السلسلة من النشاطات يأتي هذا المشروع أصوات زراعية. لماذا أصوات زراعية ولماذا هذه المدونة؟ طبعا كما ذكرت زميلتي ميريلا، هناك العديد من الأهداف، منها تقديم آخر التحديثات حول الابتكارات والممارسات والتقنيات الزراعية بما يتناسب مع الظرف الحالي والواقع الحالي، إذ لا يمكن أن يعني أقول للناس باستخدام التكنولوجيا العالية أو مثلا استخدام وسائل تعتمد على الوقود أو تعتمد على الطاقة وفي الوقت نفسه ليس لديهم هذه الطاقة. إذا نحن بحاجة إلى أن نقوم بعملية أقلمة للعمليات الزراعية واقتراح حلول إبداعية يستطيع من خلالها المزارعين زيادة إنتاجهم ضمن الظروف والحالات أيضا المتوقعة. أيضا هي وسيلة ربط بالنسبة لنا كأكاديميين ومهندسين زراعيين والتشبيك في ما بينهم. نعم، أستطيع أن أقول بأن هناك فجوة بين الباحثين أنفسهم، كوننا متفرقين في دول عدة. نأمل أن ينتهي هذا في القريب العاجل. وأيضا هناك يعني ضعف في التواصل مع المهندسين الزراعيين ومع المزارعين أنفسهم. كان في السابق مثلا تقام يوم حقلي، ندعوه يوم حقلي أو ورشات عمل أو ما شابه ذلك، أو حتى مؤتمرات ولقاءات في الداخل السوري تجمعنا مع بعض نتبادل فيها الأفكار. في ظروف الحرب هذا أصبح غير ممكن. أيضا لدعم المزارعين على نطاق واسع وبطريقة بسيطة وسريعة في ظل يعني عدم إمكانية أو صعوبة إمكانية الوصول إلى عدد واسع من المزارعين. لو سألنا، وفي بعض الحضور منا يعملون أيضا في منظمات، أكبر ورشة عمل يمكن أن تدعي إليها سيحضرها 20 أو 30 شخص أو حتى 50 شخص، وهذا أيضا هذا الرقم أيضا مستبعد. في مثل هذه الطريقة نصل إلى آلاف المزارعين وبطريقة بسيطة وبطريقة أيضا عملية. أيضا تطوير هذه التقنية بحد ذاتها بالنسبة لنا كتقنية جديدة للحصول أو للتواصل السريع مع المزارعين. مثلا على سبيل المثال زملائي الزراعيين يعلمون هذا، قد نواجه في خلال فترة قصيرة، دعني أقول هذا الأسبوع نعاني أو هناك خطر للجراد الصحراوي، فإذا أنا أستطيع من خلال هذه المدونة أن أوصل معلومات سريعة للمزارعين، وكذلك بالنسبة للأمور الأخرى. أيضا المساهمة في التدخلات طويلة الأمد فيما يتعلق بالأمن الغذائي والاستدامة الزراعية من خلال إيصال هذه يعني خبراتنا وأيضا الفائدة طويلة الأمد سواء كان للمزارع والمهندس الزراعي.
طريقة التوكل بعد نابس يعني ليش؟
عارف ايش ما حتى سألت يصير في وظيفة
وين بزايا؟ وتقول كم؟
تمام، شكرا. السلايد التالي ماريلا. نعم، إذا لتكون هذه المدونة فعالة وأيضا تلبي احتياجات المزارعين على الأقل في المرحلة التجريبية هذه، وفق يعني دراسة بسيطة أجريناها مع المزارعين وبعض المهندسين الزراعيين، ستغطي المدونة في المرحلة الحالية أهم هذه المواضيع التي سأذكرها الآن. ولكن أود هنا أن أنوه بأنها ليست فقط هذه المواضيع، وإنما فيما بعد انتهاء المرحلة التجريبية فنحن يعني إن شاء الله مستمرين في تقديم هذه الخدمة، وسوف تغطي كما ذكرت ما نسميه يعني بموضوع أو حدث الأسبوع، هو الحدث الزراعي الأهم، فسوف نغطيه في حلقات يعني ما بعد انتهاء المرحلة التجريبية. المرحلة الحالية تضم يعني أهم المعلومات عن المواضيع الزراعية من ري وتسميد المحاصيل والخضار والأشجار المثمرة، أيضا كيفية تحضير التربة والعناية بخصوبتها. وفي الحقيقة هذا موضوع مهم وجديد بالنسبة لنا بعد أن عانت الأرض منه من التلوث بالأسمدة والمبيدات. أيضا المكافحة المتكاملة لأمراض المحاصيل والفاكهة، سنركز على 3 محاصيل: القمح، البطاطا والزيتون، كونها من أهم المحاصيل الاستراتيجية حاليا في سوريا. المحاصيل البديلة وأهميتها، وهذه قد تكون يعني أحد الحلول لإنتاج مثل هذه المحاصيل، كونها قليلة التكلفة وذات إنتاجية عالية، وهي مطلوبة في الأسواق العالمية، وإنتاجها يعني يكون جيد في سوريا، وهي بلد الشمس، وبالتالي ستكون غنية بالزيوت العطرية والمواد الطبية. أيضا ننوه إلى موضوع مهم جدا، وهو إنتاج البذور والمحافظة على الأصناف المحلية، الأسمدة العضوية وإنتاج الكومبوست. كيف يمكن لنا أن نحسن من إنتاج الزيتون وجودة المنتج. أيضا هناك تطرق إلى بعض الممارسات وطرق الإنتاج، وكيف يمكن أن نزيد الإنتاجية، أو ما هي المقارنات بين وسائل مختلفة. أيضا سنتحدث عن تقنيات الزراعة الجديدة مثل الزراعة المائية وغيرها، زراعة الفطر، وهناك مواضيع أخرى. وأيضا الطرق المنزلية لحفظ وتصنيع الخضار، ومواضيع أخرى كما ذكرت سيأتي ذكرها في حينها، ووفقا لرغبة وما يحتاجه المزارعين. السلايد التالي. نعم، خطوات بناء المشروع لن أطيل فيها، ذكرتها زميلتي ميريلا بالتفصيل. فقط أن أود أن أقول بأننا خضعنا لتدريب على إنتاج هذه المدونات، وكيف يمكن لنا استخدام هذه، وهي في الحقيقة تقنية بسيطة. أيضا تم التعاقد مع 15 خبير لتقديم هذه المواضيع، وهنا كان لدينا هدف بأن نسمع آراء أيضا مختلفة ومتنوعة من زملاء في الأرض يعملون وعلى تواصل مع المزارعين. أيضا تسجيل الحلقات ونشرها، وتوظيف 15 أيضا مرشد. هؤلاء المرشدين سيكونون وهم في الحقيقة على تواصل مباشر مع المزارعين من خلال عملهم الحالي، فسوف يقومون بإرشاد المزارعين على كيفية استخدام التطبيق الهاتفي، كيفية الوصول والاستماع إلى هذه المدونة، وتليها حملة ترويجية ومسح لحوالي 600 مزارع عن طبعا رأيهم وأمور أخرى سيتكلم عنها زميلي مارتن. بالتأكيد تحليل البيانات والوصول إلى مواضيع مقترحة للحلقات المنزلية. السلايد التالي، أو أنهيت. نعم، بالنسبة للنشر أو كيفية الوصول إلى هذه المدونة، أستطيع أن أقول بأنها في البداية هي مدونة موجودة على الإنترنت، فإذا هي متاحة للجميع، سواء كان للمزارعين في سوريا أو خارج سوريا. وهنا دعني يعني أخبركم بأن بعض من الزملاء بدأوا يسألون عنها وهم موجودين في دول أخرى. بالنسبة للمسح يعني كما هو موجود في الخريطة، قد يكون على اليمين في الأسفل، توضح المنطقة التي نستهدفها في إجراء المسح، وهي شمال غرب سوريا. إلا أنه كما ذكرت بأنها متاحة لجميع المزارعين على مستوى سوريا، والمواضيع التي نغطيها أيضا هي ذات اهتمام لكل المزارعين السوريين. يمكن الوصول لهذه المدونة من خلال مواقعنا على الإنترنت، أو من خلال الهاتف، التطبيق الهاتفي، والذي يعني سيكون قريبا إن شاء الله على جوجل ستور. أيضا من خلال صفحاتنا على الفيسبوك وتويتر ومنصة أنكور وسبوتيفاي المعروفة للجميع. هذا بالنسبة إذا حاولنا أن تكون طرق الوصول للمدونة سهلة وبسيطة وأيضا بنفس الوقت متعددة. Next slide. أوكي، قبل أن هذا كان بالنسبة لي في قبل أن أنتقل إلى زميلي مارتن، أود حقيقة أن أوجه شكر عميق لبرنامج كارا سوريا ولزميلتي التي كانت دائما متحمسة، زميلة ميريلا في جامعة ساسكس، أيضا البانحين لهذا المشروع الرائع، وأيضا الشكر الكبير لكل الحضور لكم، لأنه في الحقيقة يعني استمرار هذا المشروع والنوعي والمميز إنما سيكون بدعم منكم وبمساندة. شكرا لحضوركم، و يتابع معنا الزميل مارتن للحديث عن التدوين الصوتي وتبادل المعرفة من أجل التنمية، والذي كان له دور رائع وبارز أيضا في إيصال في وضعنا على هذا الطريق.
Thank you very much, Shahar. And thank you, Mirella. And a big thank you to Mirella from the very beginning. She was the driving force behind Agricultural Voices Syria and has made it happen in spite of a lot of very challenging circumstances, both with COVID and with getting various institutions to communicate to each other and sifting through their bureaucracies. It's a very difficult job, and I appreciate your doing that. So let me talk a little bit about why podcasting is good for development projects. First, it's economical, it's cheap. As Mirella mentioned, we spent about £750 on some very high quality professional podcast production equipment for the project. That buys everything you need: the microphones, the accessories, the mixing desk. If you don't have one already, for another £750, you can get a brand new laptop that functions perfectly fine for uploading the podcasts and managing the podcast feed. It's a relatively easy to learn technology and to do in situ. We did the training that Shahar mentioned in about 3 days on Zoom, 3 rather intense days with some extra support sessions as needed. The producers learned the basic shapes and elements of podcasts and the form and tone of podcasts that were most similar to the kinds of things that we imagine being produced with Agricultural Voices Syria. The training also included the technological side of things: how to use the console, how to use the connections, how to make phones communicate with consoles, and how to do the basic uploading and feed management that's done through Anchor FM, which is a free platform for distributing podcasts on all of the major podcast aggregators. It is a part of Spotify, but it gets podcasts on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Audio Boom, Acasts, and all of the others. You can, if you want to spend a little bit more money, get an increased level of subscription that allows you more access to more features and to more analytics. However, 95% of the podcasts, professional podcasts that are produced with these free uploading platforms. The history of using podcasting to give voice to people marginalized by official authorized licensed media channels is also a very significant factor why podcasting is very, very good for development projects. Podcasting, at least at the moment, and especially in the developing world, is an opportunity to rebalance the scales somewhat between the large state and commercial broadcasters, which tend to dominate the scene, and more independent humanitarian development NGO voices that would have a hard time reaching the same kind of audience. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. This is interestingly not something that is unique to the developing world. Podcasting is used to give voices to marginalized groups of people in all countries. I worked over the past few years with an outfit called Podium.me, which was born in the wake of the London riots in 2011 to give young minority urban people an opportunity to express themselves and to frame the issues that concern them in their own terms, in their own ways. The freedom that podcasting offers cannot be understated. You don't need a fixed point of transmission like old media. It's much harder to shut down and to silence. Broadly speaking, there are no podcast police. You can do whatever you want and whatever your audience will bear. One of the key characteristics of it that mesh very, very nicely with development projects is its intimacy. Most people listen to podcasts on earbuds, which are literally inside your body, visualizing in their minds what's being described. And in that way, people build stronger attachments to the media they're listening to through having to do that imaginative mental work. This intimacy also means it's easier to build longer lasting connections with an audience than it is on lots of other media. The idea of it being niche is also quite important. It's really, really great for developing connected communities that might have been fractured through conflict or through migration or other ways. And Agricultural Voice of Syria is a great example of that, where we are putting together agricultural experts living in exile with Syrian farmers on the ground in Syria. A few more positives for framing podcasting in terms of development projects. Because of that intimacy that I mentioned, because of these strong relationships, calls to action are extremely effective on podcasting. In the US, 2/3 of podcast listeners have followed through on calls to action in podcasts that they listen to, whether that is buying things that are promoted in an ad or getting involved in particular economic or social movements or making a contribution to something else in some other way. Podcasts are integrated into social media. What I mean by this is that they are native to social media. They have always been a part of social media. Social media born really came onto the scene about 15 years ago, exactly at the moment when podcasts were starting as a medium, and podcasting was originally conceived as a form of audio social media. So what that native integration means for us is that it's very, very easy to promote podcasts on social media and also to listen to them on social media. So most podcast projects, all of them that I can think of, are promoted into the world through social media, and those social media posts contain embedded links that you could simply click on and listen to the podcast. So the social media platform becomes a kind of audio channel for the podcasts. Smartphone ubiquity and versatility is also extremely important. Another key factor that a lot of people have written an awful lot about and is worth noting here. In 2020, 45% of adults in the world owned a smartphone. In 2019, the estimates were that between 20 and 25% of people in the developing world, adults in the developing world, own smartphones, and that number was rising sharply. I personally couldn't find any data specific to Syria, but neighboring Turkey in 2019, 54% of adults owned a smartphone. And smartphones are the way that we reach people now. These same devices that we're using for financial transactions and e-commerce and simply staying connected to friends and family are the same devices that we are using to listen to, and in lots of cases, create podcasts. You can create a podcast with just a smartphone and nothing else, and plenty of people do that. There are some pitfalls that I feel we just need to kind of pull back into the frame for at least a minute or two. Podcasting is a tremendous opportunity, but there are some things that we need to always consider, if not let dominate our minds and imaginations, but to keep in mind. So podcasting is integrated into the world of neoliberal corporate telecommunications. Social media platforms, podcast platforms do not exist to keep people connected or to increase public discussion around topics. They exist primarily to keep people on those platforms and to put ads and paid promoted content in front of the maximum number of eyeballs and eardrums that they can. That's it. That is the reason why they exist. There are, for us, very clearly opportunities, particularly in the developing world, to use these platforms for our own progressive and humanitarian ends. But we always need to remember who owns the playing field and what their agendas are. The more these private platforms take over, the more an authentic public sphere tends to get pushed to the margin. And as you scale up, this is quite an interesting one. A lot of people go into podcasting thinking, oh, well, we'll be able to monetize it relatively quickly. That is actually quite a hard thing to do. As you scale up and produce more content and have more listeners, you are helping build a space that others monetize, that Apple monetizes, that Spotify monetizes. You're creating content for those platforms. And while you might over the long term see a little bit of money, it's generally not enough unless you're really, really well known to cover the even very minor costs of producing a podcast. And the last thing worth noting is the way that podcasting participates in the social media economy of followers. Undertakings like these, which involve social media in general, involves the pursuit of likes and listens and follows. And those things do take a psychological toll, particularly on young people and the vulnerable. And now there's plenty of evidence to demonstrate this. Podcasting and NGOs. So podcasting and NGOs go hand in hand around the world. NGOs in particular find them incredibly useful and effective in getting the word out. And here are some of the reasons why that's the case. So you can use podcasts to reach your key stakeholders very, very directly and immediately without any filtering from authorities. I mentioned this when we were talking about freedom a moment ago. You have a tremendous autonomy in podcasting. It's also quite a young medium, especially in the developing world, and this gives you the opportunity to claim space in the public sphere as a leader or as an authority in your field. And that means that you get to set the agenda. And that's very, very appealing for NGOs that are trying to foreground concerns that are often not on everyone's radar. They're very useful in building communities, generating discussions, identifying issues of concern, and facilitating solutions among stakeholders, because they are, certainly the best podcasts are, they are essentially conversations. So the fact that they are conversational, both in the actual sound of each episode, where good podcasts you are eavesdropping on a conversation, but more broadly speaking, there's a back and forth between listeners and producers that make them a more conversational medium. They're also very effective in integrating messages into your global facing public relations and funding campaigns. So hearing the actual voices of people who are directly benefiting from your work increases the impact of your initiatives. Just two very quick examples from my recent students here at the University of Sussex on our degree in Media for Development and Social Change. Two of my podcasting students last year are now producing podcasts for NGOs, one in South Africa and one in Nigeria. And I have another very promising Nigerian student this year who is going to do the same thing in the Niger Delta in about 6 months' time. So the goals of AVS, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because Shahar did such an excellent job of covering this. We want to improve food security, first off. We want to fill those holes left by the collapse of government support services that provided previously necessary information to farmers. We want to use AVS to undertake a systematic pilot in conflict zone podcasting for development. And what we want to do is we want to generate a model for these kinds of projects that can be done in other parts of the world. That is the reason why I'm involved with this project, and the thing that I see as the most wide-ranging potential social benefit from it. Part of that involves doing some research, which I'll talk about briefly on the next slide, which Mirella has mentioned in passing. The last goal, and goal is very, very important and very, very tangible and real, is we wanted to resource the AVS producers with skills and technology to do their own completely autonomous podcast projects in the future and do them to a very high standard, to help them develop an audience that they might draw on for program ideas, but also support going forward. This is a photo from our training sessions, which we did on Zoom. That is one of our podcast hosts, learning how to use our Rode Podcaster Pro board and microphone to record a sample of the podcast. So in terms of Mirella and I being at the University of Sussex and what is expected from us by our universities, the research aspect of this project is quite important. It's more conventional, but academically very useful because of that conflict in Syria that you all know about so well. The amount of media, sociological, and consumer data that is available about Syria, or at least that I have been able to find, is extremely limited. So this project holds the door open for us to collect lots of useful information through the small army of podcast promoters and survey takers that Shahar has organized. So we're going to ask our listeners and collect information about their crops and their modes of agricultural production, their relationship to the land they farm, the way they use podcasts, social media, and technology more broadly, what future content might be appealing to them, what their expectations for the tone of podcast delivery is, how they feel about their own communities and social relationships, and how they might be able to contribute to similar projects in the future, and to what extent they might be willing to offer perhaps a modest bit of financial support. So I am now going to pass it over to Catherine Jones, who is our communications manager, who has reached out to all of you and invited you to this event and put together the Sussex-based website, which is the more academic-facing website, the ACDP website, where the podcasts themselves live and where the audio can be played through a web browser is accessible through our site. But I'm going to leave Catherine to take us through that. I'm going to stop the share, and Catherine, you can share the screen and take us to the website and talk us through it.
Thank you very much, Martin. So I'm just sharing my screen now. I hope you can all see that. So this is the Agricultural Voices Syria website. This is the English-facing site. On it, you can find much of the information that we've had already in the presentations, about the project, the stages of the project, some of the goals. This is also where you can find the project outputs. So we have the a lot of information about the podcasts themselves. You can't listen to the podcast on the site at the moment, but this is something will probably happen in future. But we do have the English transcripts on the Agricultural Voices site. So you can read what the podcasts are about. And there's also a lot of information about what's included and covered in each episode. This is also where you're able to find the case studies. Currently we have 3 case studies up, but the others, will, as Mirella said, will be following soon. So this is just the place that you can find all the information about Agricultural Voices. I think pretty much everything is covered on here at this point. And it will continue to be updated as so once we have the results from the surveys, they will also be put up here with some infographics information about them. So keep coming back here if you want more information. And if you follow us on Twitter in particular, you will know when it's being updated, as I'll post it. Is there anything else you wanted me to say?
No, I think that's it. I think if you stop the share, I'll just pull up the last slide and then we could take some questions. Okay, so that is all of the formal content of this afternoon's launch event for Agricultural Voices Syria. We are really, really happy to entertain some questions and to start some discussion now. What you can do is you can put those in the chat if you like. Or just raise a hand and Mirella or Shahar or myself will look out for those and try to answer. So what questions about our very ambitious and fast project? So I think Mirella kind of glossed over it, but it is really remarkable how much we have been able to accomplish in such a short period of time for such a small amount of money, relatively speaking. That is a real bonus of podcasting. It is light and lean and nimble and gets in quick and gets out quick. What questions?
So, because I think we're heading towards the end now, I would like to thank you for attending our event and also to invite you to follow us on social media, to follow our project websites and ACDP and SAE websites where you'll find the episodes and also our, and for further information, yes, our Twitter is Agricultura Vox, and ACDP has uses also. This is how we share it. It is our AVS Twitter, and just remain in touch with us. Just to address some of the last comments that we received today, the content of further episodes will depend a lot of this collaboration, and of course farmers can be part of them, other experts, also that can trigger different future research to work on topics that today become very important and urgent. So, this tool that we imagine with this project can become a tool for development and for addressing agricultural problems and for promoting sustainable development in Northwest Syria. So thank you very much for being today with us. And it was a pleasure to meet you all. And I hope to see you also at the end of July when we will have a workshop to conclude the project, and when we hope we'll present our results from the survey. So more news for you, possibly interesting, and just remain in touch. And of course, from our side, we'll follow your advice, your guidance, and Shaher, I'm sure, as a director of SAE, will continue to monitor closely farmers' needs and agricultural related issues in Syria. So if we don't have other questions and other comments, I will just finish here. If Martin, you want to add something, and Shaher?
Thank you all for being here. It was a very great way to launch Agricultural Voices Syria. Please do listen and please do follow us on social media and let us know what you think as the episodes come out.
Shaher?
شكرا للجميع. حقيقة الكلمات لا تسعني الآن للتعبير عن سعادتي ببدء هذه المدونة. أستطيع أن أقول بأن لدينا الآن أكثر من 5 حلقات. أعتقد اليوم تم نشر أو البارحة تم نشر الحلقة السادسة. مستمرين معكم، وكما أقول في يعني الكليشة تبع المدونة، مدونات أصوات زراعية، معكم في كل وقت وفي كل مكان. فالشكر موصول للجميع بدءا من جامعة ساسكس ممثلة بالدكتورة ماريلا والدكتور مارتن. شكرا لكيت روبرتسون وبرنامج كارا سوريا الذي سهل هذا التواصل الرائع والذي سيستمر إن شاء الله. الشكر موصول لكل الزملاء الذين عملوا ويعملوا معنا الآن، سواء كان المقدمين هذه الحلقات قاموا بعمل رائع، وأيضا المرشدين الزراعيين والفريق التقني والإداري الذي يعمل معنا. الشكر الأهم لمزارعينا الذين زودونا في يعني بهذا الإيحاء وهذا الوحي لكي ننطلق في مثل هذا المشروع. الشكر الكبير لكم لحضوركم، لوقتكم، لكل هذا الوقت الذي أعطيتمونا إياه لهذه المداخلات الرائعة. فكل الشكر والتقدير. اعذروني على الإطالة، ولكن يعني هذه فرصة جميعة لنا جميعا. كل الشكر.
Thank you. I will end now. Thank you again. Bye.